I'm here with Allan from Agilitec, and we're going to be diving into a little bit of practice today, kind of some of the things that they're doing, and just really unpack kind of more of an informal conversation around their MSP practice. So, Allan, welcome. Love to just have you speak a little bit about yourself, the company, and just kind of give us a high-level intro there.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Nick, for inviting us. Definitely appreciate it. So I'm obviously Allan Hoxon, Agilitec IT. We just celebrated our 18th birthday on June 1, right? So we're officially an adult, I think, now, maybe. Definitely went through some growing pains and challenges, and I think we are really figuring out who we are, but obviously needing to evolve with the times. It's a challenging time, but exciting, right? We're very excited about the future. We definitely went through the normal MSP journey to some extent, although I really started out with maintenance and block hours, but it was still proactive management and then evolved from there through the normal MSP journeys. But at this point, I think about 2 years ago, we started really thinking about what is an MSP and who are we serving. So we serve a unique client base in different verticals, but in the end, most of them are very high touch, discerning client base, right? That wants people to anticipate needs and know how to service that client base, whether it's private aviation teams, high-end fine dining, family office groups. They're unique types of businesses. So they're not formulaic in the standard MSP, right? So it's hard for us to standardize our operations because they're so different for each client. So we have to be able to be nimble and agile, i.e. Agilitec. And I think we understood who we are and what we do and what we like to do, and that services who I am as a person. Yep. Right? Because I get a little bored and static. I mean, static repeatability is not my strength, right? And once I think we understand who we are, we can then step into that power, if you will.
Right.
Not saying standardization, repeatability is not important, right, but I have to hire people that do that. That's my current understanding of who we are.
Yeah, and on that topic, we've been talking obviously behind the scenes here, but one of the things most recently is you guys have been shifting a lot of your business model, and I think it's really unique, in the ways that you guys are looking at this space on a macro level, but also, changing up the organization internally. So I'd love to have you speak to that as well too, just on those changes and what your focus has kind of shifted into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we certainly went through the normal, I guess, MSP education, right? And went through the peer groups and went through the standard systems and learned how to be a normal MSP. But then again, about 2 years ago, we really started shifting from that and understanding, okay, with this type of client, where are our roadblocks and why aren't we able to execute at the level that we think we should be? Yep. Right? There was always seemingly roadblocks, and in normal MSP structure, as you elevate yourself out, you lose touch with your client base, right? And now I'm just managing people, and ultimately that's not my strength either, right? Yeah. My strength is being in front of my clients and strategizing and brainstorming and figuring out solutions and then handing it off to my team to execute. And then I can maintain relationships with the clients, especially at a high level. And honestly, that's what I enjoy doing anyway. So really, this is the stuff I really like to do, so why not do more of that? And so instead of having account managers, CAMs, TAMs, whatever you want to call it, everybody has a different version of it. The simple way to say it is I put myself back in front of the client. Okay. And so I'll have as many meetings with clients as possible, right? Because they'll take meetings from me much easier, and I can provide better value, have better conversations. It's not formulaic. I'll go where they need me to go, and I'll help guide when it's appropriate. Obviously I'm try to keep myself at a strategic but also future thinking level, right? So I can see what's coming up next, which is even, I think, more important now than ever. This rapid advent of AI, not just LLMs, but obviously agents now, right? This is the movement. This is where everybody needs to go, in not just MSPs, right? Just the business in general, right? Just the world in general is seemingly we have this big cliff coming up. Right. I wouldn't say cliff. Maybe that's like a tank, So it could be, honestly, like if your business is not doing the right thing, it could be a cliff for your business, or it could be a rocket ship, right? Yeah. We could look at it both ways. So I think, at that high level, that's, I think, the easier way to understand it is, whatever I need to do, put myself in front and then build the appropriate team in the back end to support that. But I think we also recognized that selling traditional MSP services is very hard. I don't think any MSP would argue with that. It's one of the harder sales to do because it's so trust-based, right? And people don't switch IT providers unless there's pain. right? There's some sort of loss or loss of trust, loss of data, incidents. It's hard for the businesses to move away. So it's also hard to attract them and obtain them in a good manner. And so we got away from the selling the full package, if you will, right? So I don't even know if you call us an MSP anymore. We're almost a VAR, right? It's not a bad word. It's a different value, and we're reselling things. They may be SaaS licenses, they may be solutions, right? Maybe they're AI agents we're reselling and packaging up, as long as they're going to provide value to the client and everybody's happy. And so we're trying to remove those barriers as well. We primarily work with co-managed as well. I love working with internal IT teams. We can certainly speak their own language, and we help elevate them as well. The world moves so quick that they can't keep up. And I think MSPs have a distinct advantage is we are constantly innovating and seeing all of these new tools and systems and a plethora across verticals. I mean, it's just a constant, we're constantly getting inundated, right? I think more than most IT people. I'll say that. Certainly enterprise doesn't see that much, small to medium, but we fit really well in I'd say 1 to 10 IT people. Okay. We like to become their IT leader, if you will, ideally, and maintain all of their internal people to provide boots on the ground. And they already have that trust with their user base. And we can come in from a strategic level and help guide the path forward. And again, that's a win-win, right? Internal companies very happy because we didn't rip away their people, right? And they're getting direct support as well, unlike a traditional MSP model where it's open a ticket and hope we get back to you in the right time, versus, they can operate much quicker internally. And so again, it's a complex world and getting more and more complex. So we have to be able to move quick. And I think that's the model that works, at least for us.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. And I love, you have this high touch point, conversing with your clients. I'd love to hear, a little bit more about what questions you kind of get around cybersecurity. How are you broaching that conversation with them, more on the executive level? Because as I feel like we get a lot of buy-in, obviously, on project work and improvement for the tenant. So what are you hearing in that regard?
It's been a journey there as well. I mean, cybersecurity, I think, maybe 5+ years ago, it was like pulling teeth a bit more. And convincing. I'd say in the last few years, it's we have clients, asking us, right, and they want to have those conversations at least at a high level. They don't need to understand the technical details, but it's more of a risk management communication, right? Like how do we ensure that we are safe, and what can we collaborate on to ensure that that we're given the budget and in order to actually implement the right solutions, right? And so more and more companies are willing to open up their budget to allocate toward technology to begin with, which is necessary in order to protect them fully, right? I'd say also having AI conversations drives cyber, right? A lot of companies are coming to us asking, how do we do AI, right? Because they're just hearing it. They don't want to be disrupted. They don't want their competitors to be first, right? And they know that this is things they need to do, but they have no idea what that means, right? And so before we start the AI conversation, so yes, that's important, but we need to clean your house first, right? And that then drives adoption significantly, right? Because then we'll roadmap and really assess. I mean, we already assess them, but I think then they get we have real focus at that point. Because if they know they need to do this to stay in business, right, much less competitive, then we fast track that. Say, well, here are all your gaps. In order to do that, you need to upgrade these licenses. You need to implement these policies. We need to classify your data. We need to segment it. We need to move it forward across all departments, right? Yeah. It's not just an IT conversation at all, because we don't know what kind of data you want ultimately, right? So that means meeting with each department head and understanding how to restructure their data, right? No more of the forklift everything into one file share, certainly, and get a lot more adoption on streamlining those things. And so those also drive productivity gains and everything else. And I think once we get those balls rolling, then it's nonstop, right? Then they really see technology and technology providers and consultants are a real business unit for them. We're no longer under the CFO, right? We should be at the leadership table as well, driving the business forward. In my opinion, IT service providers in this industry should be one of the most important departments in the company.
Yep. What kind of artifacts, or if you do at all, just do you bring to the customer to kind of showcase the business risk potentially for these events, or showcase what's in their tenant, as well as kind of the continuous improvement you guys are doing, within their environments to kind of showcase, hey, we're doing more than just the traditional MSP model of break fix and support. What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, and to be honest, like we prefer not to do support, really, right? That's also the reality is we've eliminated a lot of support positions and moved those and hire more and more automation engineers and back end systems people. A lot of, clearly our co-managed typically we don't do any end user support, right? We're on the guidance and reselling of tools and systems and packages. From I guess we'll go back to the artifact side. We really don't have to show them articles these days, right? That was previously we did, right? To show them, okay, if you don't do these things, look at these businesses and how they were impacted. It's a bit more of a scare tactic, right? Or raising awareness, but now we don't really need to, right? I think the awareness is there for those, at least for our client base, that no, if they don't do these things, they're not going to stay competitive or they could have an incident, right? And so now it's a matter of how do we map out risks, right? And how do we give a roadmap? Because that's what you have to do effectively, right? It can't just be point solutions and little problems. It's really digging down deep and laying out a 1 to 3 year roadmap is the ideal situation if possible. So how do you do that, right? That used to be a huge challenge. I'd say newer tools, i.e. CloudCapsule, right? I'm just saying that has been a huge proponent, or it's increased our capabilities significantly to run those assessments and risk analysis and gap and present it in a way that executive team understands it. Right, the reports are good. Technical people, because remember, we're working with all segments of it, dealing with leadership there. They don't want to see ultra detail. They want to know at a high level where their gaps are and what are we going to do to resolve it. They don't need to know how we're going to resolve it. They don't need to know intricate technical details. But if we're communicating with their technical department, they want to see how the sausage is made, right? They're not even necessarily looking at it from a strategic level. They're looking at it from a deep technical level, like, what are the things we need to kill in this system? What are the migration paths that we need to go to? What are the priorities? And so, depending on how, I guess, mature their systems are, this could be a 3 to 5 year roadmap, right? With knocking out critical things first so that there's not an incident, but then game planning, how are we going to drive improvements beyond that?
And I know you guys, some of this might be as far as a true north for guidance around, that strategic conversation about continuous improvement, or, how you guys are thinking about, saying, hey, this is what we believe is going to move you into the next best position. There's obviously a lot of factors with that, but I know you guys aligned to CIS as well too. So just interested to hear, how much does that play into your thought process, your back-end operations, things like that?
I think CIS has given us a roadmap, clearly, right, or a framework, obviously, to align against, right? So we're not reinventing the wheel, right? I think that's very important to align with a framework so that there are some best practices and standards, and they are getting updated as well. And so we have to evolve with the times as well. I think we made a mistake earlier on and in some cases tried to teach our clients CIS. That's also a roadblock, right? Because then you get the deer in the headlights look, especially with non-technical people, and it really just slows down the conversation. So we reference it. We say, this is the framework we align to. And then we'll tie in the strategy accordingly so they understand, what we're attacking, right? Clearly we typically start with the asset side, because if you don't know what your assets are, then how are you going to develop a plan to protect them? So we simplify that language, and in the roadmap that we develop, we will align it accordingly to CIS, at least internally, but we really don't reference it too much beyond that with our clients, right? They know we're doing that.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. Obviously, it's probably the closest you get from a lexicon of something that's human readable versus something like a NIST or, an ISO, but it's still very overwhelming when you were going to, walk them through each of those from a technical level, or the technical controls that you're mapping to. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess you just need to speak you need to know who you're talking to, right? Yeah. That's, how technical are they? How deep in the weeds do they want to get? But executive teams rarely want to talk about those. Right. They just want to know what the problems are. What's it going to cost me? How quick can we get there? Yeah. Right. That's usually keep it high level.
And you mentioned, you have high touch with your customers, which a lot of that involves, more of this business advisory and the touch points there. But be curious to hear, how do you operationalize on the back end and also monetize, if you're comfortable sharing some of that too, of how you guys think about that from both your COGS to kind of maybe some new models based off of you shifting strategy from traditional MSP.
Yeah, no, that is an interesting question because we've had to revise that significantly. We've been tweaking and tuning. In the end, most companies want A players, right? Across the board. As you scale larger and larger, that becomes more and more difficult. So what we've realized is we actually do want all A players in the company, but what does that mean from a scalability perspective, especially in terms of cost? That's usually what it is. Can you afford to maintain only A players? So what we've realized is we create strategic partnerships where it makes sense. The more I can stay in my lane and do what we're really good at, which is owning the client relationships, the high-level client relationships. You can't replace that, right? Like we've built some certain trust, right? So think about it like a consulting model. We have independent consultants in a way that we work with, whether they're internal at our company or sister companies. They're also high-level consultants that have their own client base. They may be consultants in marketing or finance or whatever else. Yet we can really collaborate with each other and support each other from those perspectives. So in my opinion, I'd rather keep my company small and agile and tight and be very good at what we do and partner with other companies that see that same vision. And it can depend on what that partnership is, right? But we usually don't look at it from a financial level out front. We want to make sure there's like alignment in the way we operate. And do we see it's the same way? I always call it like a go-giver kind of look, right? Can we both elevate each other without just making it contract-based or money-based, right? Yeah. If they have great clients, we have great clients. They want to service their clients, and so do we. We can provide this aspect. They can provide this aspect. We can provide them with the feel of a extremely large company, yet we have extreme quality because they're being led by subject matter experts, right? I wouldn't be able to hire the best finance people, the best marketing people, the best, whatever is needed. And so when I'm working with the clients and I understand their gaps, and if it's not in my lane, then I'm going to bring in a strategic partner to help them. And then that's able to execute much faster than if I had built everything under my umbrella. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's where I see a lot of the industry heading is more of, traditional MSP becoming commoditized in a lot of ways into, 3.0 being more centers of excellence, specialty services where a lot of it's going to be autonomous, from what we used to be doing or kind of out of the box in some ways, cybersecurity being a laggard, I would say in that statement. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You understand your COGS that way too, to translate back down. Are you guys seeing that, the distribution of revenues is spiking in things like project revenue then, or is it you're still trying to get, more of an OpEx model with
there's certainly still an aspect of MRR, right? Yeah. I mean, it's makes it easier to run the business when there is recurring revenue. And we want our recurring revenue to cover our costs at all times, right? But yes, we do see an uptick in project-based billables as well, which there's nothing wrong with, right? And so when I kind of remove the mask of like, this is the way an MSP needs to operate because I was taught this. Right. And instead went, well, what kind of business are we running? And is this the right way to run the business? I think, by being in the industry long enough and running the company long enough, I've gained enough experience to go, well, that's not really serving the way we do it. And so again, we're still evolving, right, in terms of that. But, I'm certainly not tied into full package, certainly, right? Yeah. Like we don't need that anymore, right? Everything we do is a bit more modular to service the client's needs, right? Because if they really don't need my full package, whatever that is, then why are we trying to shove it into them? And in the end, we can pick up sales much quicker. If somebody wants to come in and buy a solution and I can resell them the solution through a marketplace, then why would I get in that way, right? Especially if it's I'll give you a good example is what really triggered it was we're working with, again, the co-managed internal IT departments. A lot of them, we don't do support for them, right? We don't have access into their system. We really are at a consulting level, right? High level strategic and resale of SaaS solutions. So if the company comes in and say, hey, we want to buy SentinelOne or CrowdStrike or you name the product, and they've already understood it, and we have conversations about competitive solutions. Is this the right solution? If they really want it, and I'm not liable for it, then why would I stop selling it to them, right? Okay, so it's easier pass-through revenue, and then I've gained some trust with them, and we can sit down and meet with them again, whether it's monthly, quarterly, whatever their rhythm is. I think at the highest touch points we do are weekly.
No, that makes total sense. And I think that's nice too for the client to have that flexibility, because I think it positions yourself as more of a trusted provider that's not looking to just scrape up everything, but really come in where you shine, in a lot of those ways too. So one last question, I guess more on there's one product question just related to CloudCapsule. I know you guys have been using it for a little bit, but I'd love to hear just from you, what does that look like in the sense of how you guys were operating before, how you're thinking about operating, just using the tool now?
Yeah, no, and it's certainly, speaking the language of what we were already aligning with, but it's reduced our time to execute significantly. We used to take many labor hours to cobble together through different solutions, whether they're manual or off-the-shelf other solutions, right, where we're scanning systems or exporting reports and then trying to ingest them into one platform. I mean, I didn't add up the amount of hours, but all I know is it takes us very little time to actually execute it, right, to, understand those risks. And we use it as a prospecting tool as well, right, because if we able to do an assessment on somebody before they're even a client, the value that it's given to us, right, is everybody that we've shown it to has been wowed and say, wow, that's in a way we almost wait to deliver it to them. Yeah. Because if I turn it around back to them as quick as it comes, then they don't see as much value in it, right? Because they think it's just, you just click the button and it's there. So you didn't even do any work here.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right. So you almost have that problem, which we've had when we started implementing more AI solutions in our firm. We've had to put some delays in execution, because then there's this expectation that we're not even doing any work and it's just instantaneous, and they expect everything to be instantaneous. So it's a weird process there of what is the perception of the things we're doing, and do they think we're not actually doing anything, right? When we are truly evaluating the reports. So you really don't want to just turn it around, right? We still meet internally and look at it and develop a strategy internally. I'm not just dumping the CloudCapsule report on them. Because, that wouldn't work.
Well, it's interesting to hear the delay there, but it makes total sense in the way that you want to overlay that with education in one sense of, hey, this is why, this is something we should be paying attention to. This is how we think it influences your roadmap, those types of conversations. But I think also on the other end, it is something where we're trying to bolster that as much as we can with, we had this a lot, traditional MSP, of a customer coming to us and say, I only opened up 5 support tickets. Like, what are you guys doing, right, behind the scenes? And it's like trying to translate the value of the security tools you put into place and configured appropriately from a posture standpoint, but also, just the level of attacks being blocked that they're not seeing either, because things are just working as
Right. When it's so quiet because you've done your job so well, then the perception is you're not there and you're not doing anything, right? So it's a similar thing. It's all perception of the client. So you have to show the value of your work. I think it goes back to that's where the high touch is important, because then they value that piece, right? They value that, yes, I'm driving business outcomes. Ultimately, that's what they want, right? Increase revenue and EBITDA or profit and reduce risk, move them forward. Now it's how do I move into AI? And, funny enough, when we're talking about 1 to 3 year roadmaps, now I'm almost rethinking that. You almost have to have that conversation that these roadmaps could become obsolete very quickly. You have to be open to disruption here, because these things are going to come down the pipe very quickly. I don't think any of us know how quickly, but that's going to be our job, is to figure out how this new AI revolution is going to come in and affect everything we do.
Yeah, already seen rapid change with that. And I think obviously we're very early stage here, but.
Well, I'll even add to that. You're talking about structure of team. We were just talking about that. My CTO and us do we have to restructure in a way again, right? Do we need to build an R&D department within our company to where we're constantly playing with these tools, sandboxing them, right? Do we need to hire these type of engineers that are just doing these things so that we can stay at the front level? Or do we find that strategic partner that has that trust built in? So again, I think it's shifting again in terms of structure.
Yeah, we're doing the same here. And I think there's a healthy amount of, we want to exercise that muscle ourselves to build up our own competency. And then, not going to be shy from getting somebody who's had a lot more at-bats, right, than us.
I think that's a good strategy, right? Because it's like, we still like to play, right? That's how I'm built. I love new technology. I love new concepts. I love to R&D them. I'm not going to execute them. That's not how I'm built anymore, but I need to surround myself with the people that can, whether they're internal or is it a partner, right? I think right now it's speed of execution and and I guess ability, right? And making sure you have the best talent, right? Whether if it's not you or internal, make sure you're pairing with them so that you can accelerate the execution in the end. Yeah, versus upskilling internally.
Yeah.
That can be a long road. I don't think any of us have that luxury of time anymore.
No, yeah, and it's such a diverse, skill set in certain senses, but also just the pace of rapid innovation is something that I don't think many people, can keep up with just on their own. And certainly the team collaboration helps when you have a lot of people with different perspectives, bringing that to the table, or variance in client environments. It's what I found has helped me a lot.
Yeah. I almost think we were almost built for this time, right? Because I think in the past it's been a detriment.
Yep.
I like to play a bit too much and break things in a way, right? And that's not been great for steady growth of the company. I've been known to replace tools like a lot, just to because it interests me. As I've grown and matured as a business owner, I've understood that that's not great for business, but it's good for my fun. So I have to separate that a bit and be a bit more structured in it. And I think that's the adult side, right? Now I've grown up and I understand how that affects my business. So we don't play that way anymore. But now with the AI agents and the world we're coming into, I think it's an advantage that I like to play with new tools and discover new systems, and I can move fast. And we can execute quickly by being super nimble and agile. I think larger companies are going to have problems keeping up, honestly.
Yeah, I felt the same because I dabbled a lot on the Microsoft ecosystem with things like Power Automate, and it was like constant, rehearsing of iteration and testing and trying different things, and that's like worked really well now, to have that muscle built up a little bit for testing AI agents and, training models or experimenting with models.
Just constantly being interested, basically, right? I find it fun, right? Like, you don't have to pay me to do that. I find myself staying up all night messing around with that stuff, and I know that about myself. Is if I feel burnout, if you will, it truly isn't burnout. It just means I'm doing things that aren't aligned with how I operate. Once I've found these things again and put myself in that zone, there's still white work-life balance, but I find it fun, so I don't think about it as work.
Awesome. Hey, Brian. Thanks for coming in as well here too to our office. But would love to start also just with a brief introduction, kind of your role and your day-to-day a little bit there.
Sure. My role at Agilitec is acting CTO. I basically manage our technical team, oversee our security and assessment of our clients and where they're headed and where they need to be. Been in the industry for, since I was a kid, probably like we all have been. Yeah, I mean, my day is consumed by keeping up on things like, Microsoft changes, the state of the world, where we're at with cybersecurity, keeping up with, people such as yourself, putting out a lot of great awareness and information to, our market. So thank you for that. Been following you for years. So, but my role now is evolving towards being more of that R&D and leader, and building up the future team that will be able to adapt to this new world that we're entering or are already in, whether we want to accept it or not.
How do you think about that in the sense of types of qualities you're looking for in team members and people you're seeking out? I mean, there's probably some hard and some soft skills, but I'd love to hear from you what you look at there.
The first thing I look at is, coachability, right? How are you going to be able to fit into our mold, right? Because, each VAR or MSP is, a little bit different, right? They're not all the same. As much technical skills as you can have, right? I look at more of your soft skills and people skills, and are you looking at the future? Can I paint a vision and you can understand it and then execute on it? So I think the type of skills and resources that we're looking at now is slightly shifted. We went through a period in the last year where we had to really look at what kind of skills we had on our team and plan for that future. And so now we're seeing it, with the adoption of AI, level one is already kind of gone, right? Anyone with the capability to prompt an AI bot can figure out how to use Excel, can figure out why their printer's jammed, right? All those basics are going away. And now with the adoption of voice agents, now being able to talk like a human, I just see that shifting towards needing to have people that are able to execute on the automation. And I'm not going to say RPA. I never liked the RPA model because it was just like this little intermediary, piece. And a lot of MSPs, even myself in the past, had tried to level up, or take an L3, and who's probably good at one thing like network security or maybe Azure infrastructure. And then you go and try to put them in front of this new AI agent and say, go build that out for this new thing. Right? It's a different skill set, different mindset. And no one's teaching these things, right? We're all learning at the same pace right now. Yep. So it's going to be a new target of people that are hobbyists, that have passion in what they're doing. They're not after, the money component, because the money will come, right? They're more focused on how they want to grow. That's who we're targeting, or who I'm targeting now. And I'm having to evolve now to stop playing in all the tech too. As much as I want to dive into it, it's like, no, I got to build a team for the future, because they're not necessarily getting the same visions or have the same 20 plus years of random business knowledge. We all grew up building IT in so many different ways. We've seen so many different segments that many of the new workforce coming in has no concept of. Right? They don't know what a flip phone is. They don't know what a landline was with a cord across the kitchen. Right? Yep. So definitely the skill set has changed. Right. People should be working on adopting as much AI as they can, because that is the future.
How are you guys thinking about specifically like your cybersecurity stack, if you will, that you apply with your customers? How do you guys think about that as you move from maybe traditional MSP tools to kind of this future state that you're building? Has that come to mind as far as like any shifts there, and I guess that the follow-up is more around, are you guys, I know you're heavy adopters obviously of Microsoft 365, but how does that look in the sense of your security stack versus third-party tools for some of those traditional swim lanes like RMM or EDR?
That's been a long-time challenge in the space, right? Everybody is, going to these conferences wearing a kick me sign on the back for every tool out there. And people like me, I have shiny object syndrome, right? So it's like, oh, what does this do? Oh, that does it great, right? And you have to start narrowing it down. Do you want best of breed or best integrated? Yep. Right? And so what I found is, let's get to a point of relentless repeatability, if you will. Like, how can I keep just knocking down the same process over and over again, but narrow the tool set? Because to your point, hiring different staff, that's another skill problem. Right. Now you have to say, okay, I need somebody that can do the RMM and be able to script in these languages to do automation within that tool. I have maybe this EDR, MDR solution, have to have a tool champion for that. Right, so you start to build out the different tool champions internally, and at one point, just within the last 6 months, right, we had 15 tools. Now we've consolidated that down through Microsoft and really honing our ability to consult on Microsoft 365 and saying, wait a minute, we don't actually need all these other third-party tools. If you put enough time and effort into it, you can actually build that out in 365. Now, in the end, you're building more value for your client, because now you have them. Microsoft's not going to go away. Right, but Ninja RMM or whatever RMM you're using, we don't know what's going to happen with that. Right, we've seen over the years these companies build up great tools to be bought by PE, and then potentially die on a vine. Right, so I'm in the mode of full consolidation, right, to the Microsoft platform. When we have those cybersecurity conversations, being able to go in and utilize a framework. Pick one, NIST, CIS. If it's a co-managed environment, I'll usually ask them, do you understand those frameworks? And they'll tell me, yeah, I understand NIST or I understand CIS. Okay, so then the challenge becomes, all right, the people doing whatever you want to coin it, VCIO work or whatever, consulting, they now have to understand, okay, I've got to do this assessment for this client, but now I've got to forklift it into this particular framework or that particular framework, and that can be challenging in itself, right? Take a lot of time. CloudCapsule has allowed me to limit the amount of time needed to do those assessments and be able to have that value conversation, and providing a roadmap for them, for Microsoft, that makes sense to them.
Yeah, I didn't know you guys were that far, in the sense of really collapsing down, into Microsoft that way. I know you guys have always been heavy adopters, but that's good to hear too. We hear that a lot too with the TCO conversation to bring into the client, to back in that value of things they already adopt or could be adopting versus third party. And certainly, to your point, I love the comments on best of breed, because maybe it's not the best solution, when you take a look at first party, but it certainly provides less overhead that ripples through your entire team. As CTO, what would you say is kind of your biggest day-to-day challenge right now?
My biggest day-to-day challenge right now is getting out of my own way.
That's fair.
To be perfectly honest with you. Because again, I want to, I'm a builder, right? So I want to build something, but you become a perfectionist to certain things, so you don't know when to let go. Right. So that's the biggest challenge, especially now with AI, right? I'm looking at it like I feel like an 8-year-old again that just got a computer put in front of me, right, for the first time. It's like, you got to see how far right and left you can go with that AI agent. See when it's going to start to hallucinate and break down, like it's a whole new animal, right? So my biggest challenge right now is staying focused on growing and building the team to execute on what we know needs to happen. Clean up that technical debt. With every company out there has some kind of technical debt, but getting them to at least the IG1 CIS baseline, right, and then moving up from there. It's a continuous journey of security, as we all know.
What are you doing, I guess, to try to improve that?
Anytime something hits my plate now, I'm looking at it from a perspective of who can I mentor or train to do this? Who's going back to that coachability, right? Who's coachable and willing to take the coaching to get through this, whatever it is, right? And so that's become my focus now, is trying to build those teams, right? Because as we're aging too in our careers, right, we have to bring up that next generation, right? So that's my focus.
Allan touched on this somewhat, in the sense of like repositioning the, I want to be differentiated with AI to, we got to take the first step of readiness and, securing your data, as an example. How are you guys kind of broaching that conversation? What's the reception been like with clients as well too, as you talk about kind of their data real estate, which traditionally in SMB especially has been very neglected because we don't have things like data governance officers at a SMB. How do you look at that?
Right, and that's where having those strategic partners help. Because while we don't have that expertise necessarily to say, hey, yeah, we're going to take on your this level of compliance for you, right? It's easier to bring in the right resources for that issue. It is a challenge though, because you're right. Most small businesses don't even know what data loss prevention is, right? They don't even know that they can do sensitivity labeling and tagging in Microsoft. They don't know that they can put, PII wrappers around their emails going out, right? So if anything, AI, I look at it like cyber insurance. Cyber insurance pushed people to MFA who formerly didn't care about MFA, right? I kind of see it as that same concept, where it's saying, okay, I want to use AI. I'm seeing my competitors getting benefits out of AI. How do we use it internally? And when I sit down with them and have the conversation of, well, are you okay with Sally in the engineering team asking Copilot accidentally for payroll data, and it gives them the payroll data for the company because you have no governance, or perhaps you forgot about a shared link somewhere in your OneDrive or SharePoint, right? And so that really stems into a compliance conversation, leads to consulting, leads to hopefully them coming to the water and drinking it to say, okay, yeah, I need that before I'm ready. Now, do clients try to run that over and say, no, just turn it on? Of course they do. We all know that, right? But we do have to do our diligence and push back and say, while we'll give you the license and turn it on, right, maybe you should start with the leadership team. Somebody who already has access to all things, right? Understand how it's going to work. Give them a little bit of the benefit of playing with it, because a lot of these clients have never even tried it. And so that's the struggle, is getting them to the water to understand it, right, and then getting them to drink it.
Yeah, I've been doing more consulting engagements lately, and it's really been around showing them a little bit of the risk exposure. A couple of sensitive documents in insecure locations usually is the trick to get the conversations opened up. So that makes sense. We were all just at Beyond for the last few days here, and would love to hear from you. Kind of your highlight moment being there. What was your favorite session or part of the show while you were there?
Really, the keynotes. With Scott Chasen and John Street, everything that they always have to say is, very forward thinking. We were already, it kind of feels good too to see, okay, we were already kind of thinking that same thing too, right? We're already on that path. I think my biggest takeaway from all of that is what's going to happen to the MSP space now. They introduced a new acronym, right? Managed intelligence provider, whether people coin that or not, right? It is a drastic shift. And to your point with all these other third-party vendors that MSPs typically get wrapped up in, I think it's going to be very challenging for certain MSPs to make this shift, right? And so my biggest takeaway is move fast and execute as quickly as you can.
Well, appreciate you guys coming in. This was great, and love to have a conversation. Okay, guys, that's everything I had for you today. Definitely comment below with any questions you had on the interview. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week.